I have seen a lot of things in over 2 decades on this bench. I have watched grown men weep. I have watched hardened criminals go still the moment they understood their lives were about to change. I have watched attorneys twice my age try to outmaneuver me with case law they misread and precedents they misapplied. In 23 years of practicing and presiding over law, I thought I had seen every possible version of disrespect a human being could bring into a courtroom. I was wrong. It happened 41 minutes into the hearing. I was in the middle of informing Cassandra Harlow, 26 years old, daughter of Gerald Harlow, CEO of Harlow Capital Group, net worth estimated at $6.8 billion, that I was denying her attorney's motion to suppress the audio recording from the exterior camera. The recording that captured exactly what she had said to Raymond Kowalski before she shoved his hand into an iron railing and broke 2 of his fingers at the knuckle. That recording was going to be heard by everyone in that courtroom, and there was nothing her attorney's motions or her father's money could do about it. That was the moment she looked at me slowly, deliberately, with the particular smile of someone who has never once believed a rule applied to her, and raised her right hand. The double diamond necklace at her throat caught the fluorescent light. The Rolex on her wrist glinted as her fingers rose. And then, with an ease that told me this was not the first time she had done something like this, Cassandra Harlow extended her middle finger directly at my bench, not under the table, not hidden behind a file folder, openly, clearly, in full view of every person in that courtroom. The room went silent. Not the gasping, murmuring kind of silent, the other kind. The kind that feels like a held breath. The kind that comes when people can't yet process what they just witnessed. To my left, the American flag stood perfectly still. To my right, my clerk had stopped typing. Behind the defendant's table, her attorney had taken one involuntary step backward, the way a person instinctively moves away from something about to detonate. And in the third row of the gallery, Raymond Kowalski, 58 years old, 2 tours in Fallujah, 3 fingers on his left hand that still bent the way God intended, slowly closed his eyes. Not in shock, not in outrage, in the specific, bone-deep exhaustion of a man who had spent his entire life watching people like her get away with it. I looked at Cassandra Harlow for a long moment. I did not reach for my gavel. I did not raise my voice. I folded my hands on the bench, and I felt something settle in my chest, not anger, but certainty. The cold, clean certainty of a judge who no longer had a single remaining doubt about what was going to happen next. But to understand what I did in that courtroom and why it changed Cassandra Harlow's life in ways she still hasn't fully reckoned with, you need to understand who she was, who she hurt, and the one document sitting in my clerk's folder that no one in that room had seen yet. The document that was already going to end her. Before she handed me the rest, Gerald Harlow did not build his empire by accident. In 1987, he started Harlow Capital Group with a $4 million seed fund, a rented office on Michigan Avenue, and a reputation for doing whatever it took to close a deal. By 2003, the firm managed $1.2 billion in assets. By last year, that number had grown to $6.8 billion. His name was on the Harlow Pavilion at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. His family had donated $12 million to the city's police foundation in a single fiscal year. Chicago Business Quarterly had put his face on their cover 3 times. Gerald Harlow was the kind of man whose phone calls got returned within the hour by mayors, by commissioners, by people who understood exactly what his goodwill was worth. And Cassandra grew up inside all of that. Not just the money, the architecture of untouchability that money builds around a person when it arrives early enough and stays long enough. She had never stood in a line she couldn't skip. She had never heard the word no from anyone who didn't immediately reverse it. She had grown up understanding, at a cellular level, that the Harlow name was a door that opened before you even reached for the handle. She walked into my courtroom that Tuesday morning like the door was already open. She arrived 17 minutes late. No sunglasses. She was smarter than that. But the blazer was Brunello Cucinelli. The heels were red-soled Louboutins. And the double diamond necklace I would later watch catch the light at the worst possible moment was already in place. She didn't saunter. She strode with the specific, purposeful energy of someone who expects the room to have been waiting for her and finds that entirely reasonable. Raymond Kowalski was already seated when she walked in. He had arrived 20 minutes early. He was wearing a pressed blue shirt, the kind a man irons carefully when he knows people will be watching. His left hand rested flat on the table in front of him. Even from the bench, I could see which fingers no longer lined up the way they should. He didn't look at her when she entered. He looked straight ahead, at the flag. The charges against Cassandra Harlow were not complicated. On the night of April 7th, at 11:42 p.m., Raymond Kowalski was leaving the Elmwood Veterans Assistance Center on North Clark Street, where he volunteered every Tuesday evening, helping former soldiers navigate VA benefit claims, unpaid, for 4 years straight. Cassandra and two friends had been dining next door at Maison 34, a $340 per head tasting menu restaurant where her father kept a standing reservation. When Ray accidentally bumped into one of Cassandra's friends on the sidewalk outside a brush of shoulders, nothing spilled, no damage done, Cassandra stepped forward. The restaurant's exterior camera captured what happened next in full. She looked at Ray, and she said 7 words, "You people need to learn your place." Then she grabbed his left hand and drove it into the iron railing at the building's entrance with deliberate, targeted force. Ray dropped to one knee, 2 fingers broken at the knuckle. 8 weeks unable to grip tools, 2 months of lost wages from the part-time handyman work that kept his rent paid. Cassandra went back inside and finished her dessert. In court, her version was self-defense. Ray had been aggressive. The camera angle was misleading. Her attorney had filed 4 separate motions. Over 6 weeks, suppression of the audio, suppression of the hate crime enhancement, a character reference packet from 42 members of Chicago's business community, and a personal letter from Police Chief Douglas Marin, her father's close friend of 19 years, suggesting the charges were being pursued with what he called unusual vigor. I had read that letter in my chambers that morning. I had sat with it for a long time. In court, Cassandra interrupted her own attorney twice. When Ray's medical report was read into the record, the fractures, the nerve damage, the therapy schedule, she sighed, audibly, like a woman sitting through a presentation she had already decided was irrelevant. When I asked her directly whether she understood the gravity of the charges, she looked at me with that arranged smile and said, "I understand. This is a waste of everyone's time." And then she waited for me to move on. If you've ever sat across from someone who broke an old soldier's fingers and felt absolutely nothing about it, subscribe to this channel right now, because what she did next made that moment look like a courtesy. 41 minutes into the hearing, I had seen enough. I had watched Cassandra Harlow dismiss the charges, dismiss the victim, dismiss the camera footage, and dismiss me all with the same patient, polished ease of someone who had been told her whole life that discomfort was temporary and consequences were negotiable. I had played the exterior camera footage on the courtroom monitor, frame by frame, in full. You could see Ray's hand hit the railing. You could see him drop to one knee. You could see Cassandra look down at him, adjust her blazer with one hand, and walk back through the restaurant door without a single backward glance. I had asked her 3 times whether she had anything she wished to say to Mr. Kowalski. 3 times she had answered some variation of the same 4 words. My attorney addressed that. So I moved to the ruling on the audio suppression motion. I informed her clearly and on the record that the motion was denied, that the 7 words she had spoken on that sidewalk, the 7 words her attorney had spent 6 weeks and 4 separate filings trying to keep out of this courtroom, were going to be heard by everyone. Today, that was when it happened. Slowly, deliberately. With that smile still perfectly arranged on her face, Cassandra Harlow raised her right hand. The Rolex caught the light, the diamonds at her throat caught the light, and she extended her middle finger directly at my bench. Open, unhidden, absolute. 3 full seconds of silence followed. Then I looked at her attorney. He had stepped backward. He was staring at his client with the expression of a man watching something he could not stop and could not explain. In the gallery, Raymond Kowalski closed his eyes. I did not raise my voice. I did not reach for my gavel. I reached for the folder my clerk had placed to my right that morning, the folder Cassandra's attorney had never seen, had never requested, had never thought to ask about. I removed a single sheet of paper. I looked at Cassandra Harlow, and I said, very quietly, "Before I respond to what you just did, I am going to read something into the record." Her attorney rose immediately. "Your Honor, what document is—" "Sit down, counselor. You'll know in 60 seconds." And for the first time since walking through my courtroom doors, the smile left Cassandra Harlow's face completely. Raymond Kowalski had submitted a victim impact statement. Standard procedure. What was not standard was the second document his daughter Patricia had included with it, a letter Ray had specifically asked her not to submit. She had submitted it anyway because she told me afterward that her father had spent his entire life staying quiet in rooms where he deserved to be heard. She wasn't going to let him do it one more time. Ray had written the letter 6 months earlier for a Veterans Day memorial ceremony at the Elmwood Center. It was never meant for a courtroom. It was never meant for a judge. It was written for the other men and women in that room who understood without explanation what it costs to serve a country that doesn't always remember you're there. I opened the folder, I smoothed the page, and I began to read it aloud. I will not reproduce every word here, but I will tell you what the final paragraph said, because that courtroom needed to hear it, and so does everyone who was not there. Ray had written, "I never came home asking for parades. I never needed a monument or a thank you or a hand on my shoulder. I only ever asked for one thing, to be treated like a human being who matters. Not a symbol, not a burden, just a man." I set the page down. The courtroom was absolutely silent, not the polite silence of people being patient, the deep, weighted silence of people who had just heard something true. Raymond Kowalski did not look at me while I read. He looked at the flag. That same flag. This man had spent his life looking at flags and walking forward anyway, and the least I could do, the very least, was make sure someone in a position of authority finally looked directly back at him. I turned to Cassandra Harlow. Her hands were pressed flat against the defendant's table, fingers splayed, like a woman trying to anchor herself to something solid. The smile was gone. Her attorney had stopped writing. He was staring at his legal pad as though he had forgotten what it was for. Subscribe to this channel right now and share this video, because what I said next, Cassandra Harlow will carry for the rest of her life. And what her father did when that sentence came down, not one person in that courtroom saw it coming. I straightened the papers in front of me. I took one breath, and then I spoke. "Cassandra Harlow, before this court delivers its sentence on the primary charges, I am addressing what occurred 41 minutes into this hearing. You raised your hand and directed an obscene gesture at this bench, in open court, in full view of this gallery, this clerk, and the United States flag hanging 3 feet to my left. That is contempt. 7 days, beginning the moment these proceedings conclude. No bail consideration, no delay." Her attorney shot to his feet. I stopped him with one look. On the charge of aggravated assault causing bodily injury, the evidence is unambiguous. The camera footage is unambiguous. Your own words, which this court has now entered into the record, are unambiguous. I find you guilty. Your sentence is 18 months in county jail. There will be no early release consideration for the first 90 days. Your driver's license is suspended for 1 year following your release. You will complete 240 hours of community service at the Elmwood Veterans Assistance Center, the same building, on the same steps where you broke Raymond Kowalski's fingers. Full restitution of $34,000, covering his medical costs, 8 weeks of lost wages, and the full course of his ongoing physical therapy. Cassandra didn't cry. Not at first. She froze the way a person freezes when reality arrives so completely that the body doesn't yet know how to respond. Then she turned, not to her attorney, not to me. She turned to the gallery, scanning the second row, looking for her father. Gerald Harlow was there, charcoal suit, perfectly still. Their eyes met. And then Gerald Harlow did something that silenced the entire room more completely than my gavel ever could. He stood up, he straightened his jacket, and he walked out. No words, no gesture. No backward glance. The courtroom door closed behind him with a soft, quiet click. That sound broke Cassandra Harlow in a way my sentence never could have. She pressed both hands over her mouth. Her shoulders collapsed inward. And Raymond Kowalski, without a word, looked back at the flag. Cassandra Harlow served every single day of her sentence. No early release, no special accommodations, no quiet phone calls from powerful people that somehow shortened the calendar. I know because I checked. Some cases you put down when the gavel falls. This was not one of those cases. She began her community service at the Elmwood Veterans Assistance Center 8 days after her release. On her first morning, she walked through the front door, and Raymond Kowalski was sitting at the intake desk. He looked up. He recognized her. He said nothing for a moment. Then he slid a blank VA benefits form across the desk and said, "Mr. Patterson in room 3 has been waiting 40 minutes. He needs help with his disability claim." Cassandra sat down. She picked up the form. She started helping. She came back the following Tuesday, and the one after that. 6 months after the sentencing, Gerald Harlow quietly resigned from the board of the Chicago Police Foundation. He released no statement. He donated $2 million to a veterans' mental health initiative under a family trust not under his name. I don't know what passed between him and his daughter in private. Some reckonings happen behind closed doors, and they are not mine to claim. What I do know is what was inside that folder. The second document Patricia Kowalski had included, the one I never read aloud in court, it was a drawing. Crayon on white paper, made by Ray's 7-year-old granddaughter, Lily. A soldier in a green uniform, standing beside an American flag. And underneath it, in the careful, uneven letters of a child who meant every word, "My grandpa is a hero." I kept that drawing. It is in my chambers right now. On the days when a case is heavy and the weight of this bench feels like more than any one person should carry, I look at it and I remember exactly why I chose this work. Cassandra Harlow walked into my courtroom believing that a famous name and a raised finger were the same thing as power. Raymond Kowalski walked in with 2 broken fingers, a pressed blue shirt, and 58 years of quiet dignity. Only one of them understood what strength actually looks like. Now you do too. If this story moved you, subscribe to this channel and share it with someone who still believes justice exists. Because it does. I see it every single day.